is the commercial written test question. In the category General, this is part 2. Which is true when using a portable handheld GPS for VFR flight? Position accuracy degrades without notification. You're on approach to runway 17 and the winds are reported 270 at 15 gusting 20. To the west of the runway, there are some buildings. What should you take into consideration? Low-level turbulence due to the buildings close to the runway. You're flying in day VFR and begin having mechanical problems with your aircraft. You should aviate, navigate, and then request assistance and declare an emergency. Refer to figure 52.4. You're departing to the west from Lincoln Regional / Harder and suddenly experience engine roughness. Can you land on Van Dyke Airport? Yes, because this is an emergency. Refer to figure 53.2. You're over Fresno Chandler exit en route to Chowchilla. Here's Fresno Chandler en route to Chowchilla Airport, and you observe unexpected weather ahead of your planned route. How should you contact flight service for an update on changing weather conditions? Flight service station on 122.2. You're planning a flight at a pressure altitude of 6,000 feet and an outside air temp of 20 degrees Celsius. The density altitude will be higher than 6,000 feet. Refer to 54.3. What is the significance of the notice next to Circle 3? All aircraft should stay above 800 feet above ground level when flying over the magenta circle right here. During crosswind takeoff, aileron controls can be manipulated to gain flight control by pressure into the wind. You're taxiing for departure at night. There's an aircraft on the taxiway ahead of you, but you can't see it. You see a white light in the middle of the taxiway, a red light on the right, and a green light on the left. What does this tell you about the aircraft ahead of you? It is coming towards you. While in flight, a helicopter and an airplane are converging at a 90-degree angle. The airplane is located to the right of the helicopter. Which aircraft has the right of way? The airplane, because it's to the right of the helicopter. Before starting the engine, you should turn on the anti-collision lights. If there's a malfunction with the air data computer on an electronic flight display, which instrument is affected? Airspeed. While on final approach, you have mismanaged your speed and decided to execute a go-around. Which configuration change should you make first? Apply takeoff or maximum available power. Under which condition may a commercial pilot use basic med for compensation or higher? Basic med may not be used for compensation or higher. You're receiving flight following and approaching a non-towered airport you know nothing about. You requested a lower altitude from ATC in order to take a look. ATC advises that there are numerous targets below and expect lower in 5 miles. You consider the advisory an annoyance and terminate flight following, descending directly into the traffic pattern. This behavior exhibits a hazardous attitude. You encounter a stressful situation during your flight. You notice your breathing becomes more rapid. This could lead to too much carbon dioxide leaving the blood. You're on an approach to an airport at night near an active military airfield. ATC states November 123 AB, advise you have the airport in sight. In the distance you hear rotating begin with a quick white/white flash and one green flash. This is a military airfield. One of the hazards of using a handheld GPS unit is that some handheld units may not be equipped with rain alerting capability. What is the main reason why a pilot should perform continuous self-evaluation before and during a flight? To monitor pilot fatigue. A pilot can mitigate risk on the flight deck by pilot self-evaluation. During flight below overcast clouds, you see lightning flashes ahead of your aircraft. You should change course and avoid these areas. Improving scanning technique should involve learning to use short, regular spaced eye movements. While in final approach, you believe that you are experiencing low-level wind shear due to large power and pitch changes, which are making it difficult to maintain a stabilized approach. In this case, you should execute a go-around, and if a landing is not assured. What's the purpose of the hold position markings on a holding bay? Holds aircraft on the holding bay when there's an operations need. Holds aircraft on the holding bay when there's an operations need. What consideration should a pilot take regarding the consumption of alcohol before flight? Any level of alcohol in the blood affects your flying abilities. Refer to figure 52.3. Approaching Sacramento International from the northeast, what VHF frequency should you contact NorCal approach on? NorCal 125.4 in this little magenta box. Under what conditions may a person exercise the privilege of a commercial pilot certificate with Basic Med? Basic Med may not be used while exercising commercial pilot privileges. A pilot's destination airport has an air show scheduled for the day of their arrival. Where would the pilot find information about the air show and surrounding airspace? In the NOTAMs. What commercial maneuver increases your risk of a stall flight? While flying a night VFR cross-country, to avoid landing at the wrong airport or on the wrong runway, the pilot should review airport diagrams/layouts in the chart supplement. Hypothermia occurs when the body loses heat faster than it produces heat. What can pilots expect when the in-flight moving map GPS database is not current? Pilots may receive incorrect information when attempting to avoid airspace. When conducting a go-around, what must a pilot be aware of? The airplane is trimmed for a power-off condition, and the airplane's nose will rise rapidly on application of takeoff thrust. Your flight being conducted at night. To maintain optimum night vision, you should make sure flight deck lighting is on its lowest setting. How do you depart an airport traffic pattern if there are parallel runways in use? Continue straight out or exit with a 45-degree turn beyond the departure end of the runway after reaching the traffic pattern altitude. Do not continue on track that penetrates the departure path of the parallel runway. When should a fire extinguisher be used for an electrical fire? Before opening the air vents. Unless otherwise specified by the airplane manufacturer in the AFM/POH, what should your first step when dealing with an in-flight engine compartment fire? Set the mixture and fuel selector valves to off. For a typical piston aircraft, which airspeed variations are acceptable during stabilized approach? Plus 10 knots, minus 5 knots, and specified by the AFM. During a stabilized approach, an airplane should be in landing configuration by 1,000 feet above ground level. Except when over water, pilotage is generally used with dead reckoning for cross-country flights. You have successfully passed your commercial pilot airplane practical test. The examiner gives you your temporary certificate, which reads, Commercial Pilot Airplane Single Engine Land, Instrument Airplane. What aircraft category rating do you now hold? Airplane category. Land and hold shore operations are prohibited when wet available landing distance. As the POC of an airplane who needs to land immediately on or off airport due to the inability to continue flying the airplane, what type of landing is this? A forced landing. When landing on an airport at night, you should land in the same manner as you would during the day. The initial indication of an electrical fire is the distinct odor of burning insulation. What are the 3 cardinal principles of a go-around? Power, attitude, and configuration. What should be used to determine items for visual inspection during the pre-flight to ensure the airworthiness of the aircraft? The AFM/POH. After engine shutdown and deplaning passengers, the pilot should accomplish a post-flight inspection. When should an aircraft on the ground be operated with a transponder in the altitude reporting mode? It has to be turned on in all designated airport movement areas. The accept altitude/speed in a clearance should not be used in a lost communication situation unless ATC specifies the accept altitude/speed as part of an expect further clearance. Refer to figure 52.3. If you need radar assistance, 20 nautical miles northwest of the Sacramento International Airport, what frequency should you contact NorCal approach on? That's going to be your 134.8. It's on this side. So not this one because you're at the northwest. In a typical pressurized system, the cabin, flight compartment, and baggage compartments are incorporated into a sealed unit to contain air under a pressure higher than outside atmospheric pressure. What is recommended before starting the engine? Turn the aircraft beacon on. What would cause a delay or inaccurate response to an emergency situation? Pilot is aiming to save the airplane and look for a place to land. Treatment for hypoxia includes flying at lower altitudes. The term time of useful consciousness describes the maximum time the pilot has to make rational, life-saving decisions and carry them out at a given altitude without supplemental oxygen. What pitch and power settings should be used when on a stabilized approach? Small pitch and power changes. The configuration for emergency descents is used so that the most amount of altitude is lost in the shortest amount of time. Which element of the PAVE checklist may cause pilots to ignore the other elements of the PAVE checklist? External pressures. When you think your aircraft is on an imminent collision course with another aircraft in an airport traffic pattern, your first step is take immediate evasive action. What are the 2 most commonly used methods of accomplishing a crosswind landing? Slide slip and a crab. At non-towered airports, pilots should announce their intentions on the CTAF. Why should you allow an extra margin of speed to be obtained before the airplane is allowed to leave the ground during takeoff in strong gusty winds? Takeoff at normal speed may result in lack of positive control or stall when the airplane encounters a sudden lull and strong gusty winds. Risk mitigation to avoid emergency situations could be done in the day or weeks before a flight, depending on the complexity of the plan. When a crosswind is present during takeoff, at what point should the pilot fully apply full aileron pressure into the wind, beginning of the takeoff roll? Declaring an emergency results in additional assistance and priority handling. The first symptom of hypoxia can include euphoria and a carefree feeling. A pilot exposed to low barometric pressure in the cockpit without the use of supplemental oxygen is susceptible to hypoxia. The normal approach and landing is divided into what phases? The base leg, the final approach, the round out, flare, and the touchdown, and the after landing roll. Base leg, final approach, round out, touchdown, after landing roll. Your aircraft is equipped with an electronic flight display. GPS is your primary means of navigation. What's a good strategy for maintaining situational awareness? Double check the systems and use verbal callouts. Using the risk management decision-making process is important because it integrates risk management into planning at all levels. Where do you find primary information for a specific procedure for losing altitude rapidly? AFM or POH for the specific aircraft. An airplane performing a low airspeed, high pitch attitude, power approach for a short field landing, an example of operating in the region of reverse command. As a pilot, you utilize risk management in order to identify hazards and mitigate risks. When unexpected circumstances arise, such as deteriorating weather that could reduce margin of error, what thought process can help you make the best choice? Allow yourself to take time, evaluate your options, and consider alternatives. Figure 903. While taxiing for takeoff, the controller gives you instructions. To hold short of runway 15 approach area, you see the sign. Follow the instructions will ensure your protection for runway 15 approaches and runway 33 departures. What hazard can affect the takeoff and landing performance of all aircraft? Turbulence due to ground obscurations. Obstructions. As PIC of a pressurized aircraft, you lose cabin pressurization. To conduct an emergency descent, you should, as rapidly as possible, descend as recommended by the aircraft's manufacturer. If lost while on a cross-country flight plan, the pilot should climb to increase radio and navigational reception rate and radar coverage. What code should a pilot squawk when in distress? 7700. A pilot should be aware that hypoxia onset is very insidious. Hypoxia onset is very insidious. When a pilot squawks code 7700, their squawk might not be received, but they should attempt to make two-way radio connections with ATC. The primary purpose of mode C transponder operations within controlled airspace is to provide air traffic control with an aircraft's altitude information. When you execute a go-round and apply full power, you should be aware of nose up attitude requiring you to put the elevator forward, unless otherwise specified in the POH/AFM. When conducting a short field landing in gusty wind conditions, how should one adjust their airspeed? Add no more than half the gust factor to 1.3 times the VSO. No more than 1/2 the gust factor to 1.3 times VSO. What is the purpose of the before takeoff checklist? It's a systematic check per the POH AFM of engine performance in the existing conditions. When using an electronic flight planner, what should the PIC do? Do paper calculations as a backup to the electronic database. Refer to figure 52. 20 nautical miles northwest of the Sacramento International Airport. What frequency should they use to contact the approach controller? 134.8. Refer to 52, Area 4. Right here. Where could a pilot obtain information on parachute activities located in Area 4? The NOTAMs. When performing a maximum performance climb, what airspeed should be maintained until clear of all obstacles? Maximum angle of climb speed. When calculating a wind triangle for dead reckoning, what navigation components are determined? Ground speed, heading, and time. Which is true regarding recording post-flight discrepancies. It increases reliability and reduces risk. When taxiing an aircraft, a steady red light from the control tower means stop immediately. What should a pilot do if a flashing red light is seen from the tower while approaching an airport? Depart the pattern, do not land. What should a pilot do when a steady red light is seen from the tower when in the pattern at a controlled airport? Give way to the other aircraft and continue circling. When on a VFR cross-country flight above 3,000 feet, what altitude should be selected for cruising? The appropriate altitude or flight level until otherwise instructed by ATC. One pre-flight risk mitigation tool for environmental hazards is avoidance. Activating airport lighting at some non-towered airports may be done by selecting a specified frequency and clicking the radio microphone. In a case where a pilot parks a plane that will not be actively flown, where should the pilot consider filling the fuel tanks? Why should to prevent water condensation from forming in the fuel tanks. A pilot is approaching a Class B airspace under VFR. What is required before entering that area? The pilot must receive an ATC clearance to enter Class B airspace.